Checking now.
All right, testing.
Oh, boy, I'm going to cut somebody.
Do you know what it was?
Yep. Somebody hard muted all the mics on this computer. I had to leave OBS. Check the settings. So, guys, we've just rallied, and God, we had some good shit going, didn't we?
We had good patter going, and well, now
we're gonna have to start over. So, here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna sit down here. We're gonna start the show over. We're gonna play the fight song. We're gonna do everything for you again, and please make a note to let us tell the engineers just to erase everything that we did in the last 20 minutes.
Yep, to 4:18.
Yep. All right. Well,
let's go.
Hey, at least we knew about it and we didn't get through what we thought was going to be a great show.
So we're going to have to speed things along this time, but let's go.
No. We're going to run over and just say, hey, somebody goofed up, because everything shouldn't have been muted from the settings menu.
Yeah. Anyway, want to play the fight song for us, son?
Yep, we're going to, this time with feeling. But first I got to pull it up. All right, for real this time. Well, boy, howdy, that was annoying. Welcome to the 3DMs podcast. My name is Jake.
I'm Paul.
And we just found out that somebody who was sitting in our studio before did something not so smart and muted all the mics. So our 20 minutes of banter that we had previously are gone. But guess what? We're going to do it all again. We hope everybody had a wonderful and beautiful Valentine's Day. And we're gonna bring this show back, and we're going to do it again.
So let's get moving. We're talking about the remaining classes, the spellcasters. You saw this coming.
Yep.
If you didn't, I'd be surprised.
All right. So we got Bard left, we got Sorcerer left, we got Wizard left. We're going to dive right into Bard. First things first, let's get some sexy facts out of the way about Bard.
So Bard started in first edition as a multi-class, quote-unquote, option, where you'd have to take multiple levels of fighter, rogue, and wizard in different proportions, or fighter, thief, and mage, I should say. Fighting man, in order to even enter Bard at all. As a result, it was something that wasn't done very commonly. In second edition, it kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And in third edition, it came back as the poster boy for the half-casters and as the actually balanced classes in third edition. As well as a support class in fourth edition. But here in fifth edition, it's finally joined the ranks of the full casters. And it's arguably one of the more powerful classes in the game. I consider it tier 2. Jake considers it tier 1.
Yes.
We're not going to get into a super deep debate on that one.
But. Yeah, we ain't going to fight about it, but we're going to talk about it. So, first things first, and we already did this. I'm gonna try to get our original copy out there, because it was a lot better. Sorry, guys, there was a recording mishap on this episode, and we're pressed for time, so we're gonna be blowing through Bard a little bit here, but. Paul and I both strongly and firmly agree that the meme culture has created a very negative view of Bard as just somebody whose sole existence is a very one-dimensional, I am here
I roll to seduce.
I roll to seduce. I am a Lothario. My whole class, summed up, is the person who tries to fuck everything that moves.
And I think this is dumb. At best, it's a horrendous waste of a good class for meme value among people who haven't played the class or treat it as a one-dimensional joke.
And, well, I mean, I get it, because bards have done some ridiculous thing. Hell, even in my game, I had a bard roll a 35 on a persuasion check on a goddess, a minor goddess, granted, but still a goddess that he had been working on for a couple of months. Yeah, this happened, and there's a reason now that my Raven Queen is a baby.
No comment.
No comment, but hey, when you roll a 35 on a persuasion, sometimes you just have to go, all right, yeah. That being said, leaning into the meme too hard can definitely, I think, takes away from the class. I think it is a class that has a lot of merit and a lot of great stuff going on, and those are things that we need to be focusing on about the class. And so let's hop into Bard.
So when we're talking about session 0 stuff, which is what we're doing today, is what do you do when you discuss
but first we got a couple of tasty facts to get out of the way,
All right,
Paul.
well,
First,
hit me.
tasty fact numero uno. According to the 538 survey of 1 month of character creation data from D&D Beyond, Bard is 10 on the list out of 12 of most popular class.
Behind, ahead of Druid and who else?
It is ahead of Sorcerer, spoilers, and the Druid, which is apparently the least popular class in the game, at least according to this 1 month of data. And it's
Druid.
On one website, and a little hard to extrapolate from, but you gotta move with what you got. Most popular variants of Bard that are played according to races selected to play them are half-elf, followed by human, followed by tiefling, followed by halfling, followed by elves. Just straight up elves.
So that sounds like every race with a charisma bonus and then every race with a dexterity bonus.
Now, as
Also human.
As a brief aside, though, on that, what really speaks to me about the information that I've just gleaned from looking at this site. This is just kind of a side thing.
All right, shoot.
I find it really interesting that half-elves are almost universally more played than elves. No, just as like a...
It's because half-elves are really good.
They are really good, but more as a storytelling kind of device. It more just speaks that, yeah, elven parents sucked, but when they go out and they find themselves a nice other race wife, they can make a kid who is really capable of something. It just strikes me as hilarious that half-elf gets or has to be fluffed in so much. But moving on. So, Bard stuff. We had a great thing going. We're going to try to pick it back up. So, the thing about Bards, we are not talking about your standard normal singer-songwriter person hanging out at the bar, getting paid just to be tonight's entertainment, the person who's spreading the news, bringing in rumors and gossip from other towns.
Not the town crier, not the singer-songwriter, not the night's entertainment. These people are capital B bards, and they know things, and they can do things. They're really talented, and they're so talented at their performing arts that they can do magic. Or their magic is spontaneous, and they weave it in the form of artistic talents.
Yes. It's
one of the two, spontaneous arcane spellcasters, the other of which Sorcerer will also be talking about tonight. But we'll get to that in a bit.
Yes. So with the Bard, this is obviously we're talking session 0. We're talking how to make the world be better suited to them, and so players can know what are going on. And the first thing I want to talk about with Bards, and the first thing that really sticks out, is that true Bards are incredibly rare.
Well,
or they are supposed to be. It depends on the slider in your game. Either there's, if it's high magic, then yeah, there's going to be magical bards everywhere up and down the street. On the low end, there's going to be, 1 or 2 of these maybe walking your setting.
You're right that the player's handbook says that they are not common, and only rarely are they found in one specific place.
Yes, they are world travelers.
But I would not say they are incredibly rare, so much as you see maybe 1 in 1,000 or so.
I'd still call that.
Now we're getting into
semantics. So, with the actual bards, with them real bards, the first thing you need to ask your player, and the first thing you want to look at as a session 0, would probably be a training question, as in who taught them, why did they want to be a bard?
Is it a one-on-one apprenticeship? Did they teach themselves? Like, did they play Wonderwall in their basement so much that they learned to set people on fire? Do they have the implication that the different subclasses of bard is there a college that you go to in order to learn bardic magic, and do they send you into a cave to fight Draugr to find a scroll instead of just teaching you how to play guitar?
Was that a
That was a Skyrim reference. Yes.
I know that was a hot take on Skyrim. I just wanted to hear it from you. I just want to hear you say it.
Yeah, the Bard's College sends you to go stab some Draugr in a cave.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, that's yeah, that's
It's one of their more questionable decisions. Anyway.
Anyways, so although that is one thing we definitely do agree on, that a College of Bards seems a little strange, but if that's what floats in your setting,
if they're not that common, then what kind of place of learning have they set up to actually teach this? Because as far as I can tell, wizards, at least in the base setting, are anyone with serious intelligence and memory can learn to become a wizard. If you study for 30 years and absolve all the pleasures of the flesh, you can learn to cast magic. But why would you do that when you can just play guitar and cast magic that way?
So
there's, I feel the college is more of an abstract thing than a physical thing.
it really depends. I mean, obviously there's real world musical colleges and artistic colleges and it would make sense that those places exist. But I definitely don't think that there is. Again, it depends on your setting. For me personally, and I also believe you feel this way, that a college set up specifically to training magical ass bards isn't a thing.
Spontaneous guesses. It seems more likely to me that most bards would be trained by a mentor figure, and obviously somebody's going to go in the comments and tell us that we're wrong, and I fully support that because it's entirely up to your creation.
But our opinion
but
of
I
the bard.
feel like a journeyman and like an apprentice and master Sith setup, except with magical musicians, is more likely.
So to keep this boiled down to those initial simple points. So part one, ask your player, hey, who taught you? Do you know who this person is? Do you want me to generate this person for you? Who was your initial teacher as a bard?
What's your connection to them? Do you still see them?
Yeah,
do you busk with them with the magical hobo act?
There's a lot of great questions that can come out of that. So the next thing for you to try to impress upon your player, for some thinking you as the DM, to do some thinking on and you to impress upon the player, is what is a actual big B bard? How are they viewed in the world? Because your standard bard is, again, just your performer, your town crier, your person who has a position that,
can't feed a family of 4.
Wow, harsh take. They are a person who has a position of vocal influence, and I mean that very literally, where they are shouting things at people, and people have to listen to them. Where the big B bard, as we have already discussed about the spell list of the bard, is packed full of
mental manipulation.
Yeah, charm magics.
Disguise magics, dissonant, like even first level,
enchantment.
You've got enchantments, illusions. You've got different ways to attack the mind. All of these things are things that would make people side-eye you as you walk down the street if they'd heard about one of them. Like, hey, I heard that this person can make you think they're your best friend just by looking at you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that scare you a little? It scares me a little.
But the idea here is, and I don't want to lean back into the meme that we just rallied against, but simultaneously, Bard is definitely one of those classes that it can slot into any party. As Paul mentioned earlier, I think it's high tier 1 because it has a very robust spell list, has the ability to make itself a even more robust spell list by cherry picking from whatever class they want. They don't wilt in combat when they get hit, and they
don't start sucking on their thumb the second an orc with an axe comes running out.
Yeah, the second they get within melee range. And ultimately, they are a charisma-fueled class, and they have the jack-of-all-trades ability. And
that's
if you're
leaving aside the fact that their select skill list is any 3, which is already pretty powerful. Just
and
any 3.
You take college lore with half-elf, that you get 10 skills. Congratulations, you have 10 skills. They can dominate either any skill-based encounter or any social encounter. Bards are a terrifying class, and that paying into your world is something that authorities, local government, and even some people who might have had some run-ins with some bad bards who are good at what they do. There is definitely high consideration to be made for how everybody around them would feel. Maybe some towns have, they just love and respect magical bards, and that's great. But there are other towns that might have, a
less
bad,
charitable opinions.
yeah, somebody
capital B bards.
Well, somebody of influence could have definitely had a very bad experience. We've all seen the movie Footloose, or at least heard of it, and guess what? There's a priest who doesn't believe in dancing, and he thinks dancing is bad. Guess what Kevin Bacon is? He's a dancing bard, baby. And guess what? This town don't believe in dancing. He's got to come in there and change opinions about dancing. Point is...
With Dominate Person.
with Dominate Person. And Kevin Bacon sex appeal. But the whole point is, he ultimately has to change a perspective because other people had made dancing seem like a bad thing. And if we delineate that to other stories, you can definitely see how a bard, Bard did a robbery. Bard did insert shady thing here that Bard did because he is a smooth talking motherfucker.
Who tends to be less on the lawful side.
Exactly.
The ethics scale.
There is, so reminding your players and reinforcing your players that there is ultimately, there are a lot of other bards out there, some good, some bad, and not everybody is going to like you simply because you're a charming motherfucker. That might turn them off. And having that negative stereotype to some people, because for some people that's a great stereotype, other people that's very negative, is going to be a very important thing to remind your players. So moving on with Bard, there's a couple of fun little questions you can definitely ask your players. And I think it's very important to how a bard actually functions. Because as we were discussing on the ride here, a very interesting thing about bard is they actually are the most adventurous of any other class in the game. I know that seems a little out there, but hear me out. Warlock, fighter, so warlock, paladin, every other cleric, most other classes with kind of an assigned thing, they have a mission. Yeah. Fighter, rogue, they're very open. Monk can kind of be off doing its own thing. Druid is very restrictive in the fact that it has to deal with its woods.
Creatures of the forest.
Yep. Wizards, we're going to talk about wizards and sorcerers in a second about why they might not really want to be adventurers. But a bard, guess what? A bard goes on a sweet adventure.
And they get a book deal.
They get a book deal. They get a press tour after this. All right. The fighter is going, well, money, loot, power.
All right, it's time for me to go get drunk for 2 years in a row.
Yeah, rogue, money, loot, power.
Paladin.
Justice. Paladin. Justice. When it gets to the bard's turn of the table, he goes, book deal, motherfucker. Press tour. He gets to wander around the country. He gets to sell this to people. The bard has the easiest, right-inable excuse to go on any adventure. And often, telling your bard, finding out what they want to do with their aspirations, what are their aspirations, them going on an adventure is pretty easy. But then also ask them some hard questions about what they, as a artist, want to accomplish. This is...
Yeah, if they're a bard, they're an artist of some sort. You can't just say, I'm a bard who doesn't believe in art, because what are you then? You're not anything.
Bards are ultimately, they are musicians, acrobats, actors, speakers, long-form storytellers, painters, and any form of artist. One thing I do love about bard is anytime somebody twists that little trope of a bard just being a musician and kind of changes it to another form of art. Like I did read a great story about a bard who was a painter, and basically Bob Ross that shit in combat.
Awesome. Thank you for welcoming me into your home today. This is a home invasion. That's what most Dungeons & Dragons adventures boil down to, is a home invasion.
I'm just gonna paint a nice phthalo blue. And you are now under my thrall. Fantastic. But ask them their artistic ambitions, because
what movement are they part of? What do they think of these other movements? What do they think of this tawdry display? What do they think of this setup?
If you want to actually, that's a very good point. If you want to go like Renaissance with it, and when things were, as far as art was a much more philosophical and theological even debate at times, that's really fascinating. But at the same time, if you want to keep it very modern, you can go, how do you feel about Taylor Swift? What exactly?
What do you think of
feeling?
the Lepidarian movement?
Yeah, how do you feel about Eminem?
Do you think he's a hack?
How do you feel about?
You're going to get in a fist fight with this artist over drinks in a bar because you think he's a complete hack
How do
and
you
everything
feel-
he's done is stolen from his past.
How do you feel about death metal? These are legitimate artistic questions you can ask. And actually, one of my favorite questions to ask a bard player after I initially shit my pants over somebody competent playing bard is, okay, well, artistically, what do they hope to accomplish?
Are they trying to make the next big thing? Are they trying to get a big hit? Or are they trying to express the truest form of their soul? Or are they trying to, make genre fiction?
It's all under the realm of pure view. So a couple of things to finish up with bard before we move on to sorcerer.
How pretentious do you want their art to be? No, okay, I'm done.
No.
It's completely incomprehensible. It's a book written only in a different character in a different language.
I
each time.
sell 25 by 25 inch screens covered in goblin blood that I place behind them and then I cut them. Creepy. No, but a couple of things I want to cover. So the different colleges highly influence what a bard is capable of. So
Valor and lore are kind of
Valor and lore of what we've been describing this whole time. Glamour, swords, and whispers are vastly different and can cover a vastly different territory, and we're going to sprint through those really quick. Glamour is definitely more Feywild, just like...
They're dangerous, but they're not dangerous in the sense that whisper bards are dangerous, so they're going to be side-eyed, but they're not going to get run out of town on a rail like a College of Whispers bard would if they exposed their college.
Yeah, Glamour focuses primarily on...
Awe.
Yeah, the idea of shock and awe, beautiful displays, and then kind of living off that energy, kind of living off that hype. College of Swords is...
I don't want to be a bard. I want to be a swordsman.
Now, actually, what I do want to say about College of Swords, because means a lot to me, might not mean a lot to, a lot of other D&D players, but for me, what I do love about College of Swords Bard is it gives you, if you're a big Final Fantasy fan, it gives you your red mage. It does. That is exactly to a T what College of Swords Bard ends up becoming. They are not as good as a wizard, but they are not as good as a combat master or a battle master fighter, but they ultimately land right in between, and that is just perfect. And guess what? They're going to have a higher charisma score than both, so they're still going to be the one to talk to the noble dick. So, final thoughts on Bard as far as character creation goes. Remind them that they can be
something other than I roll to seduce. It's a very interesting class that's hampered somewhat by the
bards
memes.
Can be spies, politicians, lawyers, any
major governmental figures, town criers, celebrities.
Yeah, there is, just more than, being the guy who walks around and tries to fuck everything that has a guitar. That trope is old and it's boring, and it's every time I have a bard player, I guess I'm jaded now to the point that every time I have a bard go and I roll to seduce the pretty lady at the bard, and that's all I'm going to try to do tonight. It's like, it's disappointing. Try to impress on them the fact that
you
bard...
were my brother, Anakin.
Yeah.
I loved you.
The bard can do so much. And it's so upsetting that it gets relegated to that role often, kind of just due to the memes. Ultimately, though, encourage an exploration of background and artistry. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, if you've ever taken anybody who's not into art to a good art museum, you usually have great conversation and their eyes are kind of open to a new world. So, do a little bit of research into music and art history yourself, and and various stories, histories, and plays and whatnot, and, present them with some shit. See if you can change opinion and get them to just be something more than what is equivalently a frat boy with an acoustic guitar.
Playing Wonderwall.
Paul, the final thoughts on Bard.
It's good. I like it. You should still carefully watch anyone who picks it, though, because chances are good they either don't know what they're doing or they do know what you're doing, and you'll need to watch them twice as much.
Yeah, I guess that is one bit we kind of didn't cover really hard, but I just want to put that fact back out there for fairly new DMs. A experienced player with a bard is going to be a nightmare for your setting because they are going to be able to accomplish a lot. Don't say no. Let them. I mean, obviously,
just watch them.
I wouldn't say just watch them. This is kind of one of the hard parts about DMing because having a bard come in and just kind of derail everything you got going can really suck. And I've seen a lot of forum posts and arguments about, well, the bard did this and now we're screwed. My game's all messed up. I've been Hendersoned.
0.25. Anyway.
Yeah. But when things like that happen, you need to try to just practice and learn to roll with those punches and find some realistic things to do.
Consequences.
Yeah, realistic consequences to that bard's actions, and try to find a way to put them in a position that is actually still bad, even though they've pulled off all aces. If that makes sense, not in a negative way, but in a way that ultimately, if they did something that was maybe a little sour to put them in a position, maybe the power isn't exactly what they wanted. Maybe suddenly, this is a big.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Well, goddamn, I was about to use that for sorcerer. But in a big example, if they suddenly have seduced their way to the top of the ladder and now in charge of a city, guess what? Well, at first they thought it was just going to be drinking and eating and farting around, and now suddenly
10 hours of paperwork.
Yeah, suddenly paperwork is a problem. That's its own little thing. Bard is good. Give Bard love. Please don't make Bard the
only love.
Only love. Like, let Bard be Bard.
Moving on.
Sorcerers. Paul, we got limited time on sorcerers. I'm cutting sorcerers so we can do wizard at full, which is sorry, sorcerer fans.
It's okay. Nobody loves sorcerer anyway.
Okay.
No, I actually do love sorcerer. It's a shame what. We'll get to that in a second.
All right. So the sorcerer, the bard's best friend in debauchery. They are hands down. Aside from the bard, obviously they are the most shenanigan-induced character. At least for me, I usually feel that because a very common trope that gets played by players. And not saying anything bad about it, but the bard and the sorcerer are usually a very sexy, party-going, bohemian style, just open, crazy animal
individual
of a character. Yeah. And those characters...
Just because they've got high charisma as a major stat. And
the
paladin doesn't get away with being a party animal for obvious reasons.
And the warlock is too busy being creepy. So...
Crawling in my... Okay.
Calm down. So... Let's get over some interesting facts about the sorcerer. They are the 11th least played class.
11th most played class, yeah. They're not popular. There's a couple reasons for this. Is they were introduced in 3rd edition as a sort of alternate way of spellcasting to wizards. Doesn't help that they kind of got they got their knees broken in 3rd edition, and they haven't really recovered from that since. The problem is that now everyone casts spells like sorcerers did, so now sorcerers are just hindered without any real benefit. So from a mechanical standpoint, it's not surprising that they're one of the least played classes.
Yes. Most popular races for sorcerer in the 5th edition, according to the 538 data we have, is human, half-elf, tiefling, dragonborn, and elf.
Dragonborn, that's an interesting choice.
Well, they do have charisma. The strength bonus is, I guess you don't want to dump strength. And they do get to breathe fire out of their mouths, which is...
useful.
Neat.
I wonder if it synergizes with the draconic background synergy water.
Well, it would make a lot of sense too, lore-wise. So, sorcerer, because we spent a lot of time and love on bard today, so we're gonna make this quick and we're gonna make this smooth. Session 0, you have somebody who wants to play a sorcerer. Very first question, when you figure out what origin they're gonna take. Is
how far back is this origin in your bloodline?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Where do these powers come from? And a comparison that I really like I think it's a very favorable comparison for sorcerer and what makes sorcerer unique to the other 11 classes presented in the game is the fact that they are the one with a superhero origin. And,
that's one way to put it.
Well, what I mean by that is, the fighter didn't come out of the womb with a battle axe in hand, just like, y'all ready for this? No, the rogue didn't show up, one day as
a surprise with neither of his parents knowing that he arrived.
Yeah, exactly, and was just like, "Hello, I'm a thief." No, sorcerer is the only class that has their powers, theoretically at least, from birth. They can get it later, they grow into it, or maybe a crazy experiment or accident happens.
It's the spontaneous caster poster child.
But they spontaneously, one day they didn't have powers, the next day they do. And they barely understand these powers, and there is so much. If you have a player who is struggling with how to write a backstory for their sorcerer, just don't be a jerk about it, but just send them Marvel Comics and DC Comic Wikipedias and just tell them just find something that works. Yeah. You can be Superman, born with powers and sent away. You could be like Doctor Strange, was in a terrible accident, and then went and met with a bunch of people who taught him how to tap into sorcery.
That's more of a monk thing, honestly.
Well, it's more of a monk thing, but I think there's a little bit of synergy there that can actually work pretty well. And if you do want sorcery to be a learned thing, the Doctor Strange route's the way to go.
We're going to talk a bit more in the wizard section about magic as a whole in session 0.
Yeah.
But we probably should have talked about that even earlier in this episode.
I think it's going to be a nice little cap note.
To be honest, I'm going to debate on this. Once you've decided your origin, like where your sorcerer's origin comes from, there's just not that much to talk about for sorcerer because usually they're not trained, so you don't have the usual one of who trained them how to do this stuff because the answer is I did myself. The only real thing you could ask is how does this link in with the background that you picked?
Yes. How has it affected their life? And that is actually where you can get some good world building out of a player that you didn't want to have to do yourself. 2 examples of this. Say they chose the criminal background.
All right.
Fairly.
It's a good choice.
Yeah. Let's say for however this baby came into possession of a crime lord by the name of Carlito Lafonzi.
I'm keeping the baby for myself.
How you doing? Mr. Lafonzi now has this sorcerer baby and is training this sorcerer baby to do bad things for him.
Pick pockets with magic or something like that.
Mage hand, just being able to mage hand a bag of coin from somebody working a stall who's not paying attention. Useful. Adds up. On the flip side of that, let's say we got folk hero sorcerer. This is a kid who grew up in a town who has sorcerer powers, and this kid is beloved by his local community because
he's so useful.
He can cast mending.
I mean, what else do you need other than mending? Mending.
The blacksmith just died, but guess what? You now have a 5-year-old who can cast mending, who does everything the blacksmith did in less than 6 seconds. That kid is suddenly a treasure to that town.
Yeah, I mean, all of the different cantrips have their uses that would make anybody who could do them quite useful in any setting in which magic is not incredibly prevalent. Like off the top of my head, you've got prestidigitation, obviously, mage hand, mending, message. If you want to send a message quietly, you've got dancing lights and light itself. And even the more destructive ones like Shocking Grasp and Firebolt and Acid Splash can do things like, light fires or jolt somebody awake or melt something that's being a problem.
Yeah, Acid Splash is the best demolition work you're ever going to get. You could pay a crew of 5 people with sledgehammers, or you could hire that 6-year-old who could make acid appear out of his mouth.
For an hour, maybe.
Not even. The house is melted. The other option, like the third option at least, and if your players have other ideas, again, these are all opinions and not guidelines. Just hey, think about us when you got some stuff going. But my third option to really consider for kind of a backstory, and this falls in line with that superhero kind of a thing that I've got going, is at any point where they taken away to train, at any point where they scooped up by people, and taken to a place. Very convenient that the Umbrella Academy came out on Netflix recently, because this is kind of relates to that, where 7 babies were picked up, taken to a eccentric billionaire's home and trained how to be superheroes because they had superpowers.
Reference Hogwarts, actually, but
Hogwarts is a very good reference for sorcerers too.
Not so much for wizards, honestly. But we'll get
Well,
to that in a bit.
there's parts of Hogwarts that make sense, but there's also parts. But we'll cover Hogwarts in a minute here. But the whole idea that somebody might come along and see a sorcerer's potential and the ability for them to potentially become a shitty person because they have a lot of power very young.
And little responsibility.
They have very little responsibility. They have a lot of very wieldable power, and they have a lot of people that are either going to depend on them or put a lot of dependability on them and also going to rely on that power. Back to our two references. If you have Ma and Pa Kent back in here in Folk Hero City, then, you know,
they're going to teach this kid decently well about
going to teach him right and wrong and how he needs to use his powers to help. Meanwhile, if you've got this villainous little shit that's being raised by Carlito Lafonzi, then guess what? This kid is going to learn how to wield his power. He's going to respect probably Carlito, and maybe one or two underbosses, but not many other people, because guess what? He knows what he is, and he knows how powerful he is, and he knows how scary he is. There is a lot of story stuff that you can develop, and with a very good conversation with a player about what their upbringing was can really impact the way a player is going to shape this character. Now, when it comes to the rest of Sorcerer, we still have a lot of the general questions. How prevalent is magic in your setting? How do people feel about sorcerers? Do people confuse wizard and sorcerers? Do they think all sorcerers are wizards and they're just like, oh, I don't see a spell book, but you're doing magic, so okay. Or is it a known distinction?
Or is it even more, do they consider it to be sort of the same thing but two different practitionings of the same way? Is it like, for an example of rap versus poetry? I mean, they're both pretty similar, honestly. But are they the same? Are they different?
Is there when it comes to your sorcerer and how the world has affected them, and this one really comes with the storm magic and the wild magic, but especially wild magic, where you can have super beneficial effects like everybody within 10 feet of you, your party, is resistant to all damage for 30 seconds. That's good. Everybody within 30 feet of you is now vulnerable to piercing damage for the next minute. That's bad. The fighter is going to be very upset about you.
Well, assuming he makes it out of his new occupation as the human pincushion anyway.
Yeah. Is the opinions on your magic, both by people who are smart enough and people dumb enough, or, mentally not there to understand what's happening with that character?
Not learned enough.
Yeah, not knowledgeable is the way I was trying to say that in a very clumsy, asshole-ish fashion. How do they feel about what your sorcerer does, and do they understand it? Are they afraid of it? Do they get it? Do they like it? Do they hate it? Things to really keep in mind with a sorcerer who is oftentimes a very loud, ostentatious character.
So one last thing I wanted to say about sorcerer before I moved on is what brings them out here to adventure? What's their call to adventure? Because if they're a folk hero in their town, why are they leaving? If they're a criminal in a city, why are they leaving?
Yeah.
Do they not have it good enough where they are? Or is the call to adventure just in their blood?
There is, as much as I hate to say it, and as much as I'm, I wouldn't say I'm anti the standard tragic backstory for an adventurer. I do think the Spider-Man Uncle Ben moment definitely ticks every box for me. If you have a good aligned party that's going out there, otherwise, everybody can find their own motivations in anything. But that whole ideal of using a gift, and where a cleric still had to work for it somewhat, a wizard has to work for it, a bard had to work for it, every other cast and a warlock had to make a deal for it. Everybody had to do something big to get these powers. The idea of a sorcerer is that this is somebody who just
got it. They just got lucky. They won the lottery.
They got bitten by that radioactive spider. And so, that old message of with great power comes great responsibility is, a way to influence a good character, but there are other ways that can be taken. After all, there's a universe where Uncle Ben never gave that bit of advice to Peter Parker and he became a dick.
Are you implying that he isn't already?
we're going to fight in the parking lot. Final thoughts on Sorcerer?
I mean, honestly, I'm sort of wondering why this class continues to exist with the uprising of Warlock and the changing of power, the changing of how spellcasting works to no longer differentiate wizards and warlocks. I mean, I suppose spontaneous casting has its uses, but I feel like that's something that could have just been rolled into wizard.
I think it could have, but my only counterpoint to that is, again, I think there's a very different thematic feel when you have a wizard who is somebody, as we're about to talk about, somebody who's very learned versus somebody who is, what is it called?
Winging it?
No, there's a trope for it. That's a delightful anime name. It's the very inexperienced pilot in the new prototype. It's something to that effect. Think
falling into the cockpit, I think.
Yeah, something like that, where basically somebody who has no idea what they're doing suddenly has all of the power of their universe at their fingertips, and they just gotta learn how to get there. And there is a lot of fun storytelling that can be done with, the sorcerer shoots a firebolt. How'd you do that? I don't know. There's a lot of great stuff with sorcerer as far as like a storytelling ability, and then again, I think there's a lot of just a lot of fun that can be had with sorcerer. And also, I mean, I'm biased because I do love charisma fueled classes. My top 3 favorite classes, 2 of them are charisma fueled. But and my top 6, all 4 are there. So when it comes to the sorcerer, I think the sorcerer definitely has a place in terms of storytelling and how it's different.
I just don't have as much of a storytelling need, I suppose, for sorcerer. I just don't think it's for me at least, it feels somewhat redundant.
Agree to disagree.
On to our last topic for the day.
The last one, the one you've been waiting for, the Big Daddy.
We're not going to fight over this one, so we're going to keep the soapboxing to a minimum.
Yep.
It's the Wizard.
3 out of 12. He is the 3rd most played class behind Fighter and Rogue, according to the data from 538.
Which isn't surprising given that he forms part of the quadrangle.
The Holy Trinity. Elf is your most played wizard, followed by human, followed by gnomes.
And everybody else does not really matter.
All right.
Which is surprising again. Why elf, I wonder? Do elves even have an intelligence bonus?
I believe they do. And also I think it's a combination of that built-in piousness, hoity-toity,
snootiness, you mean.
Stiff upper lip.
I know. I'm just going to look that up real quick with the intelligence bonus, but go on.
So with wizards, obviously, we just covered the I randomly have magic abilities. This is the learned magic abilities.
High elves have intelligence bonus. Anyway.
Yeah, I was 85% sure. Because no one ever plays elves in my game anymore. They all play half elves. Funny. With a wizard and somebody who wants to play a wizard, there is a decent amount of talking to do. Congratulations. That's what this series has been about.
We're probably going to spend more time talking about this one than we did about bards, which is surprising because we had a lot to say about bards.
So, wizard. No, we got to try to keep it short, though, because we got to wrap up here in about 19 minutes. So,
all right, well,
booyah. Let's start out from the top. We already know what wizards are and what they do. They are learned magicians. They are people who have learned the arts of the arcana and the infinite cosmos of the universe through the ability of speaking with scrolls and ruins and various other artifacts. They control the vast arcanum with bullshit.
Forgone all the pleasures of the flesh in order to become a wizard.
That's a very harsh way to put it. Ultimately,
Are you telling me I'm wrong?
You're not wrong. But what they've ultimately done is they are hardcore researchers who have figured out how to use a innate force in the universe to shape the world around them.
If capital B bards are, the top level of performers, capital W wizards, or just wizards because there's no minor wizards, are the world's top academics.
Yes.
They learn their powers by learning.
So, unless you have a very cool idea, and if you do have a very cool idea for
by
a
all
setting,
means, negate us.
Please, please negate us and tell us about your idea. Find us at, you like what's going on here. Find us at facebook.com, 3D/3DMs. Comment on our videos. Please, we show up bi-weekly to rant about D&D. Comment on our videos, talk to us, find us on Twitter at 3DMspod. and talk more about the show with us, and we'd love to hear from you, and we love talking to you. You got better ideas, please put us in our places because we love that shit. But when it comes to your wizard, and we're going to presume, we're just going to go with the fact that there is a school of learning for your wizard, for your magic user.
And we're going to differ. He tends to do with one major school, and I tend to do with minor schooling. But generally, wizards tend to clump together because they're academics.
Yes. So
I mean, you can, of course, do the thing of a wizard in his tower with one apprentice, which isn't entirely unusual. But we're going to talk about wizards clumping together.
Yes. So because, I mean, as a group and as a collective, they wield incredible power because they're fucking wizards. There's just no simple way around that. If a body of wizards clumps together, and, because, again, they are academics, and what do academics like to do? Compare notes and prove each other wrong. And what is going to happen?
Argue.
Yeah, and argue and try to prove what is the best school in theory of how to advance a certain idea for whatever academia they are trying to push. Well, then guess what? They're all going to form together. Now, the only thing that is different than a college of law or a college of art or a college of architecture is that these people can use the forces of the universe to shape
reality.
And that is damn terrifying. And there are going to be a lot of things that are built into that. The first thing that is going to come with being part of a esteemed college of mages is going to be status.
Well, maybe. It depends on magic.
No, I think there is definitely something to be said. I mean, a very common thing that we get from both Dragonlance, Terry Pratchett, a lot of people use the robe system. Wizards' robes are a big deal. I mean, Harry Potter, it's part of his shopping list in the first thing. Hey, you got to get you some robes, boy. What do you mean I can't go to?
A man of his stature has to wear a dress.
I can't go to class in blue jeans. Hell nah. Got to get you a robe, boy. The idea though is that wizards are recognizable by a wizard's robe. It's a trope. It's a known thing. It's something that's almost in every game.
Something to look at is if you're interested in subverting that, Ars Magica is a game about playing wizards in medieval Europe, and they specifically go out in robes to make people recognize them as wizards, so when they don't want to be recognized, they can go without robes.
Yeah. But that robe carries power, and by power, I mean status. People are going to recognize them as a wizard.
A learned individual.
And depending on how magic is in your setting, if we hit that high fantasy, low fantasy slider on the setting, it's going to have a very similar effect. Either there is going to be massive fear in a very low magic setting where people have maybe heard of these things, or maybe they don't even know what's going on. So maybe it won't be fear, maybe it'll be confusion why this pointy hat having, robe wearing, gray beard having, long hair having dude is...
Another thing, if you reach high levels of wizard, you're required to grow a beard. It's got to be at least down to your waist.
Male or female, doesn't matter.
And it's got to be white.
But you're going to see that person, and so low fantasy, who dat? On high fantasy, oh, yes, another wizard. There is going to be, but I think most games obviously fall somewhere in the middle, in between those two polarizing extremes.
The wizards are known, but not necessarily super common.
Yes. And so with wizards, what you want to impact on a player is that if they are playing a wizard, even a low-level wizard, a third-level wizard, for example, they are going to have a certain amount of clout. They're going to have a certain amount of influence simply because of who they are, what they know, what they can do, and where they have been to schooling.
Camera's suffering some issues. Anyway.
2 seconds. Furthermore, though, yeah, we're good.
All right.
Furthermore, when it comes to the idea of a wizard, and their status, you need to let a player know that they have those options available to them to kind of throw that wizardy weight around.
I'm a wizard. You should listen to me because I am a land man, a woman, and a scholar.
The next thing we want to talk about...
Also, I can fry you with my mind.
Yeah, next thing to talk about, something definitely, obviously, to impart on a player is what schools are there or exist. In my setting, I got all my mages. They go to one college. I mean, sure, there's satellite locations around the continent where they can either report to do more learning or train under somebody specific, or get better at certain things. But for the most part, all of the learning is done in the capital. With Paul, there are different schools. Both are fun, good ways. Like, I'm jealous.
Lots of schools scattered around different nations and continents.
Yeah, and both are very fun ways to do the trope. But what you just need to consider is, again,
training of wizards. How do you train wizards?
How do you train wizards? And it also relates back to the last statement about clout. How are these schools treated? Are they paid for by the government? Are they paid for by locals? Is there an entrance fee? Is this a private institution? Can rich families send their dumbass kids off to try to learn wizardry? Or is
even if they fail, they still get a good education?
Yeah, is there a minimum of acceptance to even get into this school?
An entrance exam?
Yeah.
Even aside all this, let's take a moment here to stop and talk briefly. Is we tend to split up. This is gonna sound weird again that we just talked about schools. So let's talk about the other schools that we use with magic. So, how much of this magical theory with evocation and enchantment, abjuration, conjuration, so on and so forth, how well known is that? Like, is it all classified under magic? Is purely an academic thing, or is there actual physical differences between the different ways these spells are cast?
Yeah, have a conversation both with your players about how those differences in magics would work, but also in how everything is perceived. Is there a common understanding of could your average Joe Blow on the street have a
difference between evocation and abjuration spell?
Or is that guy just like, that's magic, that's scary, I don't like that? But also when it comes to the schools of magic too, and another fun little bit of role playing that you can imply to a wizard, because again, both Paul and I we agree pretty firmly on the idea that wizards are academics. They're the only intelligence-fueled class in the game, meaning intelligence is their primary statistic, and there isn't another class other than Artificer, which is still technically
Unearthed Arcana.
Unearthed Arcana. They're the only official class that's fueled by intelligence, so it makes sense that they would be very scholarly.
Almost all their skills are scholarly skills.
Yes. But talking to your players about how do they feel, you have to choose a school of magic that you specialize in, air quotations. And, how does a divination wizard feel about an evocation mage?
Yeah. Is there interdepartmental politics? Is there academic poo-pooing about different schools of magic specifically because they're more or less rigorous and pure?
Yeah.
Think like the debates between the different sciences and the humanities and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because a divination mage might poo-poo on a evocation mage, but simultaneously the evocation mage is the one who knows how to blow you up, literally. So, thinking, just give personality to your little subsections of school, and that can influence player agency. Like, oh yeah, you're part of, you do illusions. Well, you and the evocation people don't get along that well.
You and the enchantment people, you're both trying to get that department merged into your department.
Nobody likes necromancy. I wish we had more time to go into the necromancy debate today.
We don't, I'm afraid.
That's going to be another episode, and there will be a necromancy episode, I suppose. So, other things to consider: military application.
Are wizards howitzers, or can you use them even more efficiently than that?
Yeah. Do wizards get drafted into the military? Are there parts of certain wizards who can voluntarily join and serve the military? It depends on how prevalent war is, which goes from always happening to no, for real though, it's always happening. Just the extreme slider of how big the war is always happening. Because guess what? There's always going to be conflict somewhere.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be running a game.
Otherwise, you're not running a game. But, try to think of how the military thinks of wizards, and again, their relationship with the military. And, soldier background wizards are actually a lot of fun. Like a rank-having wizards, you can think, Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist is a very good example of having soldier background, but still playing a wizard. Got to do a lot of book
soldiers.
Yep, got to do a lot of book learning, and they're definitely a part of a military force. Let's see. The next bit I also think very, very important to impress upon a player is, why are they adventuring? And this is
why have they left their nice, comfy life in school to go risk their lives in some damp, musty dungeon?
the idea of academic pursuits versus an adventuring lifestyle is, again, it's a pretty extreme justification. As we joked earlier about the bard, he's in it because ultimately not only is he going to profit, but he is going to be the person who told the story first.
And he's going to get the book deal.
And he's going to get that book deal. The fighter's going to get paid, rogue's going to get paid, and the wizard might gain some far forgotten lore. But that's being hopeful. I mean, wizards already make a very good living simply by being fucking wizards.
I mean, yeah, even a first-level wizard can cast a handful of spells that will set them up for life in a standard living situation.
They can. If you wanted to play D&D as just like a life simulator, then yeah, you play a wizard, you take mending, and then you hang out in a village, and occasionally you repel goblins, but for the most part,
you fix stuff.
You fix stuff, and you solve local problems. It's, you need to talk to them and just try to have your player actually figure out, why are they going on an adventure?
Is it because all the tenure positions are filled, so it's either laboring as an assistant professor or going out and making a name for yourself and ousting that bastard Grimlock from the top ranks?
Yeah. Or is it, is it something they want to prove to themselves?
Or is it a punishment and they need to get out and find the lost scrolls of Mystara or something?
Are they being forced by a superior to go out and have to try to do something as a punishment, or even as like if I do this, I get this tenured position. Just certain ways to think about why a wizard would want to be on an adventure. And I guess we kind of covered that with a lot of the other classes, but I think that'd be something that's fun to dive deeper into, is motivation. Last couple of things, and we're going to wrap up with some final thoughts here. A thing I also like to impart on my players, and definitely something that should come up in an initial conversation when talking about a wizard, is how many wizards have gone bad in your setting, because this is something
it's so easy to go mad with power, and wizards already have no sense of right and wrong.
Yeah, wizards often have that combination of academic interest, being the smartest guy in the room, usually recognizing when something is wrong before everybody else does, usually having a solution before everybody else does, and the ability to shape the forces of the universe in any way they want. All they need is enough people to think they're correct, and congratulations, you have somebody overthrowing a government. It's a pretty short and easy process.
That's not even that hard.
Yeah, especially for them once they get to enough power level. So try to come up with a couple of examples of maybe wizards who failed, and this is purely anecdotal, I have no data to back this up, but for me, most of the time, my wizards, when they get to a certain level, like a certain in-game level, like I like to call it about level 7, the wizard realizes that he doesn't need the fighter anymore, and that he can go into business for himself or herself, because they are going to be the captain now. They are the one capable of doing the most. They are the scariest person in the room. And that can be bad. So just a gentle reminder that there are checks and balances.
You are not the first wizard to have thought of this.
Yeah. Which is the next part that I also want to impress. Is there a checks and balance system in your setting? And by that, I mean, is there a force of people? We're going to use Dragon Age as a very quick example, because many people are very familiar with it, and it has a very overtone heavy use of what we're about to discuss, which Paul can tear apart briefly, I hope. But you have the Templars and the mages who, sit there and learn and do everything we're discussing, and the Templars, the soldiers who watch them and monitor them.
And will beat the crap out of them if they do something wrong. It's used as a heavy-handed racism metaphor, except it kind of falls through because people of color can't have demons burst out of their heads and try to kill everybody in the room.
Yeah, the big problem with the Dragon Age mages is that, if anything bad does happen, you kind of do need a fallback, but they always make the Templars look like shit. But that being said, though, if you do have in your setting like something from Harry Potter that's actually a kind of a fun concept to toy with, I don't use it in my setting, but I've definitely thought about it, is, what if there was some way of tracking every spell that was cast and when and where? They do that in Harry Potter. In Harry Potter 2, he gets yelled at because he blows up his aunt, which actually, holy shit, how How does Harry not just reek of PTSD as a 18-year-old?
He does. He dies.
Well, and then he comes back. Christ figure. Moving on. Yeah. The idea, though, of a system where people can track what wizards are doing, monitor the wizards, and then, kick down the door like, hey, you're doing...
This is illegal magic.
Yeah.
You don't have a permit for this?
Yeah. Why are you doing necromancy? Necromancy is illegal here. You shouldn't be casting it and doing it, whatever.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
Yeah, exactly. Banging on the door. Open up the door, motherfucker. Think about that and let your player know of any ramifications of bad things they can be doing as a wizard, because they'll
probably try to get away with it.
They'll be smarter about getting away with it. They won't realize that what they're doing is wrong.
Lastly,
material components.
I don't know why these are still in this game. It seems like a sacred cow that got left in case people would get upset if they got taken out. I don't see a point for them being here except for the expensive ones.
Hey, some people love them. Some people hate them. I prefer to save time and just assume that my players have the ones, except for, again, the very expensive or crazy hard to get ones.
Because those actually have a gameplay point, but I don't understand why you need a pinch of bat guano for every fireball.
Burns will.
It just seems like pointless busy work to me.
All right. We got to do some final thoughts, and then we're going to announce what we're doing here soon.
Wizards are interesting because I feel like the people who play them are looking to just be better than the other players most time if they're at all experienced. But the problem is that if they're not experienced enough to understand how to play a wizard, they're going to have a really bad time because wizard is a very feast or famine class, and it's difficult sometimes to properly play a wizard because of the problems inherent with being an academic with the power to reshape reality.
Yes. Final thought on wizard is, again, obviously it's the most powerful class in the game simply for what it's capable of. A well-played wizard is just a hard thing to deal with as a DM, but I think you can definitely add a lot more to... I think a lot of people want to be Gandalf, but they want to start off as Gandalf. And I think using a lot of what we presented here can definitely make a more lived-in, breathing, conscious character. My favorite character that I've ever had in my campaign setting was a wizard. It would be Keeland. Just accidentally failing up the ladder. But... the idea that a wizard is kind of a stick in the mud. You can give them so much more agency and, really just so much more... Vitality. And, again, a three-dimensional, easier to fit into your world and bridge that understanding between player and DM of how things work in your setting and what they are trying to accomplish by presenting them their options. So this has been our Session 0 series. I've had a lot of fun doing these.
That's pretty fun, yeah.
Yeah, these are a lot of fun to talk about. Next week, we are going to, and I wanted to get the sound ready before, but I couldn't find it in any of the libraries here, which I'm really upset because we got very robust libraries here at Podcast Detroit for sound effects. We're going to talk about Law and Order. We're going to talk about criminal organizations and the law organizations that try to hunt them down. So we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks' time when we see you guys. Thanks, everybody who tunes in and watches. If you enjoyed the show, you can find us anywhere where you can find a podcast. SoundCloud, find us on SoundCloud. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Anywhere you pick up your podcasting needs, we are there. Find us on Twitter. Find us on Facebook. 3DM's Podcast.
Spelled the old-fashioned way, THREE.
And, let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear. And because we love hearing from you guys and we love hearing what you want us to do next. But from there, we're going to wrap up today's show. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Jake.
I'm Paul.
And this has been the 3DM's Podcast. Let us know if any of this stuff works for you. We love you. Have a good week. Bye-bye.